Hi, I'm Don Moores, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. The Fullbright organization is planning a conference, annual conference. This year is going to focus on the immigration crisis around the world. It's entitled Un Mundo, Muchos Voces, One World, Many Voices. Dr. Bruce Fowler, he's a member of the board of directors of the Fullbright Association. He has this story. Serving Together, a program of Every Mind, coordinates a service for veterans which provides information and helps them network through health and human service organizations throughout the national capital area, organizations they need for their treatment. Mike Ball, the director of Serving Together, has these details. The president has ended his administration's policy of separating children from their parents who cross the southern border. But the consequences for the thousands of children who are separated from their parents remains very real. Shirley Brandman, who comments for this show on a regular basis, is here to discuss this issue. World Hepatitis Day takes place in July, not celebrated as something to bring awareness to this disease. And CC Health and Welfare, or Health and Wellbeing Services, is here, is already working to raise awareness of this dangerous disease. José Luis Diaz from CCI will tell us all about this. Bruce, welcome back.
Glad to be here.
To have a distinguished member of the Fullbright Association National Board is a great honor, and you're looking ahead at this upcoming big annual national or international conference, looking at immigration and all these voices from around the world. Tell us about it.
Okay, the conference is November 1 to 4 in Puebla, Mexico.
Okay.
And you can find it, the website is open, registration is open. Anyone who would like to attend is, I'm sure, very welcome. It's really about increasing understanding between countries, between peoples, and the events of the last few weeks just really highlight why this is so darn important.
You know, we look at this seemingly all around the world. We're building walls instead of reaching out and embracing arms and hands. And I think Senator Fullbright would be shocked if he were around to see this, how the world is pulling apart instead of pulling together.
Well, and it's getting more acute. As we've discussed before, there are about 7.7 billion of us on this planet, and more every day. The planet's only so big, so we must get along. And if it's true that good fences make good neighbors, building walls doesn't do that. It does the reverse. It makes things more tense.
What do you hope to come out from the conference?
This is a general conference, and I'm quite certain, the program is still being formulated, but I'm quite certain that the issue of immigration, both say with the southern border, but also globally, immigration into Europe from Africa and places like that will be topics of much discussion. We need to find better ways to deal with these things, both for humanitarian terms, but just in terms of the disruption and the animosity that these events have generated are really, we don't need it.
So the Fulbright scholars who spend time in communities and learning shoulder to shoulder, being with other nations, are they featured in this conference? Will their experiences be highlighted?
Some of them will be, certainly. People will they'll tell their stories, okay. And it is the case that if you go and spend 6 months or a year in another person's country and learn something about their culture, about their language, and have friends, you come away a different person.
Very much so. I think one of the things that you like to highlight is what the Fulbrighters have done, both the U.S. Fulbrighters going overseas, as well as Fulbrighters from around the world who have come to the United States, and what they've done in their lives since then.
Yes, there are about, I keep getting the numbers straightened, there are about 37 current heads of state who are Fulbrighters. So these are people who have gone back to their countries and been very successful. But they have a connection to the United States,
right,
to the people of the United States, that is very valuable.
So how do you use the Fulbright platform to raise the issues more loudly?
Well, okay, this is a work in progress, actually. We're trying to do this in different ways, and certainly in terms of people who will be coming to this conference in Mexico, they will bring their own agendas, and they're invited to submit their own things that they want to talk about. As I said, this issue of immigration and the friction that this is causing and the mayhem that it's causing is just, this must be addressed.
Right.
And this is a forum to do that.
Well, I think you've been up on the Hill, and others have been, and trying to share this, but it's not the Hill right now, it's the White House that's
this is a
pulling us
problem.
apart right now.
This is a problem. There are people in the Congress who, including a couple of sitting members of Congress who are Fulbrighters, including John Sarbanes, who understand this very, very well. And we're very fortunate here in Maryland to have such a progressive delegation. And in fact, I'm pleased to say that a number of members of our delegation have stepped up to the plate and gone to McAllen, Texas, and spoken out about, you know, these things that have been happening.
How many of those heads of state do you expect to be at this conference, or do you think there will be some heads of state there? How successful are you in communicating the outcome of the conference or recommendations from this conference to
well, you don't know.
heads of state?
You don't know for sure. Certainly the dissemination of information about the conference goes to anyone who was a Fulbrighter, has been a Fulbrighter, is in the system. And there are about 379,000 of us, I believe, who've
Including two on this, two right here?
include two of us
five
sitting right here.
Including your host. We got about 30 seconds left. What, leave us with some last thoughts.
Well, this is the only home we've got, the only planet we've got, and we have just got to get along. This dividing people and putting people against each other is not going to work. And in the long term, sooner or later, something really bad will happen if we don't stop it.
On the environmental side, the separation side, it's all coming down on your shoulders, Bruce, here.
Oh, thank you so much.
Are you confident that we're going to see some solutions?
We'll get some good suggestions, at least, ways forward, as opposed to building walls, which don't work anyway. Ask Hadrian. Okay.
All right. Bruce, thank you. Look forward to hearing more, and look forward to talking about so many more subjects.
Okay,
Appreciate
great.
it.
Thank you, Don.
Mike Ball,
Hello.
you're in the house.
I am again. Thanks for having me again.
Hey, listen, serving together, what a great entity, and as you keep working to try to ensure that this network of service providers is doing what it needs for our veterans. This
We
is
just
great
had
work.
our official kickoff event of the Serving Together Network for the National Capital Region on the 31st of May. We've been working with organizations in the area, human service organizations that are providing the entire spectrum, services for the entire spectrum of needs, from housing, education, employment, transportation, medical services, mental health services. What we've done now is create a network tied together by a case coordination software, so that whenever a veteran walks into an organization and they have needs that are outside, they have multiple needs, or they have needs that are outside of that organization's scope of practice, then they can, rather than just refer them out to another organization that they know and not have any information on whether that veteran or family member made it to that organization or what assistance they were able to get.
So, Mike, how are veterans finding out about this?
Well, we're out on a web. We're trying to increase our presence on social media. Our partnership is with the Institute for Veterans and Military Families out of Syracuse University. So they are also assisting us with search engine optimization and
But are they finding
social
ways
media.
to blast it out so that veterans and their families
We
know?
are. Hopefully somebody has seen our ads on the buses. We did get our ads on Montgomery County buses, so look for those. I'm very proud of them.
Do you have a relationship with the VA?
We do. The VA, it's a large entity in this area. There's 3 major VA medical centers in our area, plus multiple community-based outpatient clinics. So we are slowly working our way into different offices within the VA, social workers, trying to find out how that relationship would work. If you look, we are one of 16 of these networks around the country. So, and some of the other networks, the VA there in that location is the largest user. Pittsburgh, for example, PA serves the VA there is their largest user of the network. So, and I think that probably will be the case here as well, just because we have such a large VA presence here. It's just developing those relationships with the different offices within the VA all over. So.
Can family members request services? Does it have to be the veteran himself?
Of course. Any family members of military, active duty, Guard, Reserve, military veterans of any era, any discharge status, it doesn't matter. The value of a network is that if this particular organization can't meet their needs, or they don't meet the eligibility criteria, we can reach out to the entire network and find somebody who will be able to serve that veteran or family member.
How flexible is it?
caretaker.
Could it be adapted to go back to these children that have been lost down on the border? Could they use this? Could someone pick this up?
Well, the software we use is called Unite Us,
Okay.
and they developed this, for networks to use, and they are reaching out into other human services areas beyond just veteran services. They're reaching out into healthcare as well. I'm a huge fan of this collaborative network concept, not just for veteran services, which is what I do, but I think it would be a huge benefit in any human services to avoid the stovepiping of operations and information.
So how exactly does it work if I'm a veteran and I reach out to you and I say, I start because I have some health issue, and it comes out that I have housing challenges or other educational needs that my children have?
Well, any veteran or family member, anyone can go on our website right now, servingtogetherproject.org. On the main landing page there's a Get Help option, so the veteran themselves can enter their information in there. That'll go directly to our peer navigators, who will contact them immediately and do the intake and make the referrals to the organizations that can help them. But if a veteran or family member walks into, say you are a housing provider, and they walk into your organization and you find out that the housing issue is related to an employment issue, which is related to possibly a health issue or a transportation issue, you find out there's others. In the past, you may have known who to refer them to, but you weren't sure if they made it there. Now you take 2 minutes, you enter in their information into Unite Us, into the software that we use, and you focus then on what you do best. You focus on that housing issue, but you can watch this process take place online. You can see that the referral went to our peer navigators. They did the intake. They sent the referrals out to other providers within the network.
Okay.
You can see that those were accepted.
But then how does the veteran find out?
Got about less than a minute to go.
Sorry.
How does the veteran find out about whether these referrals have led to some results?
Well, they get that call. They get a call from our peer navigators doing a single intake, and our peer navigators let them know what they're going to do, and then a day or two later they get the call from that employment provider or that transportation provider.
So your objective is to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks.
Correct.
And
Yes, sir.
and as you go on, where do you see over the next year? How do you see yourself defining success?
Defining success in that, one of the
20
great things about this program, this Unite Us that we use, is the data collection capability. So next year at this time, if you ask me how many of a certain type of veteran, we're looking for a certain type of assistance in a certain area, I'll have that data. So not only does that help us to see what all is going on, but it also helps us see where the gaps are in services.
Well,
So-
reduce those gaps, Mike. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
I know those who have served our country so proudly.
I'm looking
Much
forward to it. I'm
appreciated.
excited about this, and I think it's really going to work well.
Thanks. We'll be right back after these messages. And we are back. Shirley Brandman,
Hi.
Your Excellency, former member of the Board of Education and wonderful intellectual leader
Thank you.
in our community. Horrible what's going on in the southern border, ripple effects here in Montgomery County. Help set the stage and why we should care about this in Montgomery County.
Well, so our immediate focus just needs to be on what is happening to these kids. And I think it's really important for us to recognize that there are going to be long-term
So
impacts.
separation of families.
Separation of families
At the border coming in.
causes trauma.
Right.
Causes trauma for these children. The research is solid. This kind of being ripped away from your family, no preparation, no idea where you are, strange country, not to go to stay at an aunt or uncle or trusted other adult, but literally not knowing where you are, not having anyone able to tell you when you might see your parent again, having no explanation, and the deceit. So many of these parents being told your child's going to have a bath, or your child's going to play, and then they're gone.
We heard about they're going to go take the showers. We saw that 60 years ago.
I think it is truly horrific, and I think what we've underestimated is that this is not just an issue for the moment, and this is nothing that's just going to be resolved when children are united with their families. And we already know that we've got a huge question about the 2,000 some odd children we've already separated. We have no plan.
With some of those parents, and some of those parents have been removed back to the countries overseas, and they're now in the United
Forcibly.
States, talking about maybe some of these kids will never see their parents again.
So I think what we need to recognize is that what we are doing is affecting these children emotionally. It's also affecting them physically. It's affecting their brains. The research is really solid about the fact that this kind of very deep, significant trauma is like a toxic stress that actually affects the chemicals in your body and actually has an impact on your brain. So when we think about what these kids are living in, this heightened state of anxiety and stress over prolonged periods, it's going to impact their learning, it's going to impact their well-being, and frankly, it's going to impact their health going forward. So some of it is some of these young people may end up here, and that could be our impact. Some of it is that these young people, they have families. We live in a rich, diverse community with a lot of immigrants. Many of them have connections, have relatives, have families. They are feeling the ripple effect.
And we are
of
seeing
stress.
it. We are seeing it already in our health centers. We have patients that are coming in with signs of anxiety and hypertension and things that are completely related to the fear of what could happen.
Because we know that we have families here, mixed status families, we have dreamers here. They look at the underlying message of the separation, and it's that you might be next.
Right.
The vulnerability, the idea that this is how we will treat the most vulnerable, just sends fear.
We've seen it too in my parent organization. Every Mind runs a lot of the linkages to learning programs, and they're already seeing a drop off in attendance at school, and people are afraid to even leave their homes or go to school.
We're seeing it in veterans as well, because a number of veterans come in, they have mixed family, mixed status families, or they're green card holders and going in to serve, and being told they're not in there. We see lots of veterans now being locked and
family
and
members
deported.
of veterans being deported. It's frustrating. It's
thank you for serving our country. It's a nice
home,
message.
Right.
Yeah.
That's frustrating. It makes me angry to see, and I think that's probably the reaction of a lot of people. So what can we do?
Well, that's not what this
vote.
country's about. I mean, I think, our congressional delegation, to go back to them, has been very good about standing up and saying, this isn't what we're about here. And,
So let's get back to that question about what can we do?
Well, one thing we can do is not take our eye off the
Right.
picture here, right? The idea that this executive order signed has resolved everything is simply not true. So first of all, what is happening to these thousands of kids who've been separated? And moreover, what are we doing for these kids who were separated? The idea that we are not focusing in on really immediately resolving these issues to try to minimize the impact. And also, I would say we know enough to know that these kinds of adverse childhood experiences go on for a long, long time.
About 30 seconds left. I think one of the things you're talking about, don't take the eye off of this, is that they're now going to be putting the families together in these cages, and if the parents are going to be prosecuted for a misdemeanor, which is what this is, and go to jail, the kids don't go to jail, so then the kids are going to go back into the system the same way. And this is basically
absolutely. We need to continue to protest and speak about it, because we need humane plans. We do need immigration policy, but it needs to come with humanity. It needs to recognize and minimize any traumatic impact, and we need to understand our future is at stake with these young people.
And the issues are right here. We're seeing it right here in Montgomery County.
We're feeling it right here. We're related to it, and these kids are coming to us.
Shirley, thank you so much. Come back as this story is going to continue to unfold. And much of this, as we just heard from José Luis, is in the hands of CCI Health and Wellness. We'll talk about more, and I think hopefully our producer, Carlos Tensky, and associate producer, Linda Barnes, will have you come back and talk about how your organization is finding this ripple effect. But today we're not talking about that. In your story, we're talking about hepatitis.
Which ties in with our future, right? We want to talk about hepatitis because it's the leading cause of death in the world.
I had no idea.
More than HIV, more than malaria, more than tuberculosis. So it's a real public health threat. And the World Health Organization has put together a plan to eradicate it by the year 2030, which is not that far. 12 years from now, we can say no more hepatitis. And one of the reasons it's so prevalent is you can be asymptomatic. You can be a person carrying the virus and not know and put other people at risk.
And
how is it transmitted?
Depends on there are 5 types, A, B, C, D, E, but the most common transmission is through bodily fluids and contaminated blood, and there's some foodborne transmission as well. But we know how to get rid of it. We've done it before. We got rid of polio. We got basically rid of tuberculosis with some exceptions throughout the third world. So we have the infrastructure, we have the ideas and the plans. We just need to continue to move forward with awareness, testing, and treatment.
Does it start with education?
It starts with awareness. Like with any infectious disease, people need to know how can it be transmitted. People need to know if you are carrying the virus, and then take the precautions.
So if it's asymptomatic, if there's people that are walking around that are asymptomatic, does it show up on any of just the regular blood tests that you would get at a regular physical, or what should they look for?
And that's it. I think all we can do is ask people to consult with a medical provider. Go see your medical provider. Go get a full panel of tests. For example, there are 4.4 million U.S. citizens that are walking around with the virus right now and don't know it. That's quite a number. That's
crazy.
That is insane, right? And those are people who are here, who have access to care, who have access to education.
So if we want to eradicate it, do we have to get medical professionals to screen more regularly? How would we?
So it takes a network of providers, right? It takes a network of community-based organizations that we cannot all do it by ourselves. It requires the people that are going to be able to go into areas where there's no access and do culturally appropriate interventions and education. So it starts with a combination of folks, the right folks, that can put together a plan to help folks not contract the virus.
So how do we in Montgomery County do our part? With 5 of us right here, what can we do to help your efforts as the provider of so much health care to people?
We must encourage people to go to see a medical provider when they're healthy. We often go when we're not feeling right or when something shows up, but we really must go when we're feeling great. So we establish a baseline so we understand who you are as a person and how do we keep it that way.
Okay.
So go see your medical provider, get tested for it. We have lots of opportunities, as our friends from Evermind know. There's lots of community-based organizations like ours that can treat anyone in the community regardless of their insurance status. That's what we're here for. And I think the main idea is to understand that it is an issue that is not going to go away. It's keeping the eye on the issue is number one. Understanding that it is a threat to public health.
Should we all be vaccinated?
Well, you can't go to college unless you are.
Really?
Yes.
I guess if I'm going back to college, it wasn't in my plans.
I think everyone is tested for it, and so there is always an opportunity to figure out if one is a carrier.
So a framework in place for eradicating this by 2030.
2030, awareness, testing, and access to care.
And is affordability an issue? Is the vaccine an expensive vaccine?
Not at all. I mean, these are the drugs that we use to treat are antiviral drugs. It's like the more prevalent the disease, the cheaper it is to treat it. So there are lots of opportunities, and there's lots of resources out there. The World Health Organization is behind it 100%, so there's an opportunity there.
Are those hepatitis?
30 seconds left.
I know we got those in the military, we got the hepatitis vaccines, but is that becoming part of the regular vaccines that kids get now? Is that part of their regular schedule of vaccines?
In the U.S., we have, it's called the Combo 10, which is from birth to 18 months, a battery of vaccinations that will prevent diseases like this to take hold. So
let's fight hepatitis.
Let's do it. I'll be back in 2030, and so we can say we eliminated it.
You'll be here alone.
That'll be wonderful.
Thank you guys very much for being here with me, and thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, inviting you to join us next week at this very same time.